Greetings, beloveds. I greet you in the love light of the one infinite creator. Let's take a look at markets here. We have about 1 minute to go before the end of the session. This is for the weekend of October 25th and 26th, 2025. All right. So again, 1 minute to go. Markets coming a little bit off the highs here, but net still going to be a positive weekly move for the entire market. So closing at all-time highs for the NASDAQ and the other averages. Take a look at where BTC is trading. It is trading at about 110,500. Now let's take a look at the summary for the week. And what we can see here for the week, we essentially have markets that are higher. Let's call it about 2%, give or take, but a nice gain for the week, for the most part, including BTC. So up about 2% now. And there's the close. If we take a look at the NASDAQ daily, this is a 6 months daily. Just want to show you that here on the 6 months daily, we are effectively closing at an all-time high there. And so that's how the market is ending the week. If you take a look at the hourly for the NASDAQ, this is where we start seeing the possibility of a pullback as we begin the new week. And this is just what the charts are suggesting to us based on where the market closed. So if you take a look at the prior breakpoint, so there's a breakpoint somewhere there. And so that is what we've been using here in the last couple of weeks, if not days there. And then you take that line and draw a uniformity line from here. You can see that this is where the market has been responding as far as the NASDAQ hourly is concerned. All of these short-term highs, this is where the market has struggled. And we can see even before that big drop, this is where the market had hit that level and pull back. So this drop here comes after this double top. And you can see by the end of the trading session, end of this week, we are closing exactly with the resistance on this line. So what that means is that as we start the new week, there's a likelihood of a market continuing pulling back off the highs of Friday into the highs. Now, to correct this, there's one way the market can really take off is clear this line here. And in doing so, we are going to have to see fresh intraday and even closing on a daily closing basis, all-time highs. So we might begin a week with a pullback. But again, I'll show you some other charts that suggest that even a pullback is not the worst thing. Now, if you take a look at the NASDAQ daily, now, number one, if you go back to my prior analysis here in the last couple of weeks, remember every time we've been tagging RSI 50 with uniform activity, the market has bounced. So this is what we were watching here in the last couple week or so, last 3 weeks or so. And every time the market pulled back, it came to hold RSI 50. And we knew that that meant we were going to go back to new highs, if not test and challenge the prior highs. We are seeing we are making a fresh all-time high there. That is consistent with our understanding of the RSI. And it also happens to be, for those of you who've not been following every day, but you can see that there's also another line here, this breakout line. If you draw it that way based on my uniformity concept, you can see once we tag this line here, you can see after this big down day, the market held support. And upon holding that support, we were poised to go back to test the highs, if not improve on those highs. So what the market is doing is not a surprise. But what I want to also introduce now is another way of looking at, taking a look at what the market is doing currently, with the conclusion that this is a place to watch for possible day-to-day resistance. It's this line here. And what you see with this line is that this is where we break down here, which is this big down day. And now we are coming back to test that line. So we can say that if that line ends up being resistance, if we end up being resistance on the line there, then we're going to have to start pulling back from current levels. Again, the market also has the opportunity, if it desires to, and has the energy to do so. If it can clear that red line, then we're definitely going to increase and be recording improved all-time highs. Now, you take a look at the NASDAQ from a weekly standpoint, and this is great if you are bullish, because we had 2 weeks of rest and now we are breaking out. In other words, this is a fresh breakout. This is not a tired breakout. No, this is a rested breakout after 2 weeks of rest. In other words, we took a couple of weeks off and now we are back to breaking out. That's great for bulls. Also, as long as the RSI on the weekly for the NASDAQ continues holding above 69.1, this is a market that could see substantially higher prices in the coming weeks. Take a look at S&P 500 and let's go to the weekly here for the S&P 500. By the way, the NASDAQ, let me give you those the numbers. The breakout numbers are going to be in the description of the video so we can save some time here. Take a look at the S&P 500. After 2 weeks of rest, it is now staging a fresh breakout. That is exactly what the bulls wanted to see. And the S&P 500, as long as it's holding above the prior weekly closing high at 6715.79. So this is a weekly closing high, previous weekly closing high from about a month ago. Then this market, as long as that breakout is in effect, then the market has a possibility of going higher. Also, we look out for the S&P 500 weekly because it closed below 69.1. If it moves back above 69.1, then that is a sign that this market has legs to even explore higher prices. Now, S&P 500 on the daily, similar to that of the NASDAQ. Just want to show you here that, by the way, we tagged this 50-day moving average a couple times there, and we bounced off that 50-day moving average. So not a surprise. But what I also want to show you here, we have the same line, similar to that of the NASDAQ. It's this line here that is forming a backtest line. But what I can do here, let's go back about 2 years. S&P 500 daily. Just want to show you a couple of lines. So the first line is this line here. If you are following me here in the last couple of weeks, we talked about this line. Why? Because we saw a breakout here that took the market higher. And throughout all of this process, the market's been bouncing on this blue line, for those who are aware of this blue line. And this is just based on my own research. We tagged that line there and we bounced. All right, so that was what we talked about here in the last couple of weeks. Now, let me propose another line here, a variation of that same line. It's this breakout line here, and I'm going to extend it out like that. And again, we can see that every time we move above the line here, the market's been responding well. And I'm just summarizing here. Every time we break below this line, for example here, the market drops, and there was resistance at that high right there, back below the blue line. And you can see recently here we went below the line. So what I'm saying here is, if you bring back the prior line that I drew, and so we draw it the following way, so this line here, you can see that where we close for the week and for the day is, it looks like if we end up being unable to clear the blue and the black line, it's somewhere around here on the daily. S&P 500 is poised to go down day to day. But understand that if the market takes out those two lines, then we are definitely in for another push to improve all-time highs. Now, compare that with the weekly chart for the Dow weekly. And what we see here is, take a look at this line, which was problematic for the Dow a couple of weeks ago. We're talking about where the Dow seemed like it was struggling here, which is this area here. But finally, we moved above that line there with that breakout in price. And you can see here in the last week or so, we are using the same line for support. So the weekly charts is where we see the market holding strength. So as long as we're above this blue line on the Dow weekly, then the market continues to be stable to bullish. Now remember, as far as the major averages are concerned, the Dow is the one that's lagging, but the Dow is getting very close to 69.1. So that's something that we are watching, because if the Dow joins the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 above 69.1, it means that only one thing, it means that we are going to see higher prices in the market. So we are still vigilant as long as the Dow, remember the Dow, as far as its monthly price breakout, that has been, the breakout took place about 3 months ago. This is month number 3 of this breakout. So the price breakout looks good. It's only the RSI that is lagging. And we can also say that the MACDs are not at 3-year highs, but they are not the worst, not the best. But remember, it's a moving average, so it tends to be a little bit on the slow side. But keep in mind, the Dow is struggling. But if you take a look at the SPX on its monthly chart, you can see the RSI for the S&P 500 is nicely above 69.1. This is why the market has been very strong. The price breakout took place about 4 or 5 months ago. So let me see. This is month number 1, number 2. Number 3, number 4, number 5. 5 straight positive monthly gains since that breakout. As long as the RSI is above 69.1, we allow the market the room to move higher. And you can see the S&P 500, the MACDs are also at 3-year highs. In this case, all-time highs. So the market is actually not that bad as far as the S&P 500. In fact, I should say the market continues to be strong, is what that chart is telling us. Take a look at the NASDAQ. Remember, the NASDAQ, also like the S&P 500, broke out in terms of price a couple months ago. This is the monthly chart. So broke out in price. RSI continues solidly above 69.1, and the MACDs are also at all-time high. So the NASDAQ moving higher is not a surprise, since that is exactly what you would expect from a market with this type of monthly chart. Now I want to show you the chart for, let's take a look at the VIX, because the VIX in itself, if you go back to what I was discussing last weekend, I was talking about this double top in the VIX, and I was saying that that double top could be problematic for the VIX and bullish for the general market. So the VIX has pulled back since then because of that double top in the RSI. It's not a surprise. I was talking about every time we come to 69.1 and we are rejected, it tends to be where the VIX turns around and goes lower, and the general market is a buy. So if you understand how to read the VIX, that was there. Take a look at the weekly. One of the reasons why the market had a nice week is because the VIX weekly is moving below RSI 50. Now, there's this weekly closing high here, and that price is at 21.66. So I would set that as an alert on a breakout level, because if the VIX can clear this the recent weekly closing high, 21.66, if it breaks out above this level in the coming months, then that would be tied down with a market that is poised to drop. So watch that level as a sign that the market could be pulling back. Right now, with the VIX trading where it is, we are giving all our benefit, or at least we understand that the odds are favoring the bulls, moving the market higher or keeping the market stable. As you are aware, over the last 22, 23 years, I've been specializing on timing momentum breakouts for clients. So let's take a look at some stocks that have done well here in the last couple of months. And all the arrows, the blue arrows, is where I sent out breakout alerts. And you'll notice some of these stocks don't break out immediately. This is January of 2024 that led to nothing. So this was not a successful breakout here. Again, tried here again, January of 2025. 1 year later, nothing happened. But finally, we cleared this level here. And this is in August. And the breakout alert most recently was sent when it was here at about 17. And from 17, the stock over the last 3 months has gone all the way to as high as 74. So a huge return here for one of the stocks that I've been recommending here in the last couple of weeks. IREN is the ticker symbol. So yes, it wasn't an easy one to get off the block, but eventually it caught fire and has had a big run. Of course, I've been talking about Robinhood, and all of the blue arrows are where I sent out breakout alerts. And you can see the most recent breakout alert here. The stock has moved, and 50 was the most recent breakout. Of course, we've been entering the stock here in the 20s, in the lower 20s. And I believe there was another breakout here in the lower double digits. So let's call it about 12. Stock has gone to trade as high as 161, 150. Let's go at 150 and change. So huge return here as far as Robinhood is concerned. Another stock that I recently sent out breakout alerts for was RGTI. And I'm sure by now everybody's familiar with this stock. But now remember, initially, the interest that I had with this stock is this move here. This is institutions understanding that there's going to be another move. So understand that they set the stage up, they cram in the stock, and then they let it settle down. But anyway, the blue arrows is where I sent out multiple alerts for this stock, and not all of them were successful. Here, nothing happened. And then here they started picking up as it approached this breakout level here. Finally, I gave out a couple of breakout alerts here in July. And that's as it was breaking out above, just before it broke out above 15-ish. And stock has gone to trade as high as 57 here in the last 2 months. So a nice move there. Another stock that has had a nice run is EOSE. This is stocks that I've been sending breakout alerts to subscribers. So EOSE was one of them here that has done well, maybe surprisingly well. But you can see a series of breakout alerts here in May, in June, and another one in August as it cleared this zone, was approaching this zone. I do send out breakout alerts before they break out as candidates to watch, but I can see what happened here ever since that breakout. Stock has had a nice run from breakout level as under 6. So under 6, it's going to trade as high as 18, 19 here in the last 2-3 months. Now, one more that has been an IPO is SanDisk, and I started sending breakout alerts here in June, and a series of breakout alerts here in August. 2 in August, and once it cleared this zone here at about, let's call it just under 50, maybe 49, here in the last 2 months or so, the stock has gone from 49 to trade as high as, let's see here, 185, 186. So this has been a huge return, almost 300% as an IPO. If you know how to time IPOs, this should be a classic one. I teach this on my YouTube channel. You can see here the RSI on the weekly moved to new highs. Even the MACDs were moving to new highs. 3-year highs is the minimum, but this one was moving to 3-year highs. And you can see everything was lining up for a big breakout for this stock. So SanDisk, yes, it's been a surprise runner. But again, if you understand the minimum requirements, your chances of owning some of these stocks are in your favor. If you take a look at VT, by the way, if you want similar breakout alerts, just be sure to follow my breakout alerts during the week. Take a look at VT, which tracks global markets. After 2 weeks of rest, it is also breaking out here. This is exactly what the bulls want to see. So that pullback here in the last 2 weeks or so was desirable because now we have a fresh breakout in our hands. Remember, the monthly continues to be similar to that of the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. RSI is above 69.1. So global markets as a group, as a whole, continues to be very strong, very stable. Take a look at GLD. I want to show you GLD here because on the daily, about 3 days ago, we had a huge drop here in the miners. The silver, the gold stocks were down huge. But remember, as far as the daily was huge, but we still have the monthly, which is very strong for GLD. Again, we can see that GDX had a big drop. About, I believe on the daily here, we had a couple of days ago, almost a 10% move, this drop here. But it's coming back to rest at the 50-day moving average. And also take a look at the monthly. The monthly continues to be pulling back, by the way, as we go into one more trading week for this month. This pullback is desirable by bulls because after 1 month of rest, any future breakout above the monthly closing high from the month of August, then that would be a breakout, a fresh breakout. So 1 month down and a future breakout would mean that GDX would be staging a fresh breakout move. So sometimes a pullback is what you need before you can continue moving higher. Take a look at silver. Also had a big down day, like I was talking about. All these metals had a big drop here about the beginning of the week or so. I think it was Tuesday or Monday. Can't remember very well. But you can see here, even the RSI is still coming back to test the 50-day moving average, the 50 RSI level. And I think I would hold, as long as that level is holding, the chances for this being stable to bullish in the coming weeks is also back in play. Take a look at the monthly chart for SLV. The RSI continues to hold above 69.1. So yes, we had a big drop this week in terms of a daily action, but the RSI on the monthly continues to be very strong. Now, I've been talking about the dollar chart, and let's take a look at the dollar chart. And what I've been saying for many months is that the dollar looked like it was stabilizing even as GLD was making a hyperbolic move. Now, the dollar to me has always looked like, not always, but here in the last couple months, has looked like it was going to stabilize. Now, you'd think that the dollar would be dropping significantly as we saw GLD move high, but GLD spiked, the dollar just stayed sideways. So as long as it is holding, I've been saying that as long as the dollar is holding this level here, then chances are this holds on the monthly, and in the coming months, we see the dollar stabilizing to moving higher, as long as those levels are held. Now take a look at USO, and I'm going to show you the weekly chart. USO this week had a recovery run of about 7%. Nice snapback move, but you'll notice that it's really effectively, if you take a look at the long-term picture on the monthly, this is going back to 2022. It's been trading in this range for the last 3+ years. And we can see that the challenge has been on the top side. You can see the RSI would have to clear this top side RSI level if it's going to go higher, and that is not happening anytime soon. We can say that it is still not breaking below this line here. So net crude oil and the energy names are still within this range. I would not really tell you where they're going to be in the coming months, because this is what they've been doing for many years. They would have to break out of a range before we can see a different pattern. Now take a look at BTC. We're going to go to the BTC and take a look at BTC from a weekly standpoint. Actually, that's the month. Let's take a look at the weekly standpoint and let's go back about five years. And we can see on the 5-year weekly for BTC, this line continues to be where BTC is holding. So we know that if the line holds, if it holds, then in the coming weeks, BTC is going to be higher. And we also know that if the line breaks, then in the coming weeks, BTC is going to be down. That's the weekly. Take a look at the daily. The daily, I was talking about coming off the lows here. This is where the RSI found support. And ever since then, this is where we've been seeing major lows as far as BTC is concerned on a swing trade basis. So we can see here a series of support here. And also we are back above that 200-day moving average. So net BTC is stuck between a downward sloping 50-day moving average and a stabilizing 200-day moving average. So generally BTC is in a sideways position. If you take a look at BTC and we go to the 4-hourly, you can see the 4-hourly has a line here that it has not been able to clear. There's a line here. Let me go back about, let's go back about 6 months. All right, so what I wanted to show you. So this is a line here on the 4-hourly. Take this prior resistance line and draw it that way. You can see that we move above the line here and we have a nice reaction in BTC. We drop below the line and we see that BTC pulls back here. Oops. So BTC right there. And then recently resistance on the line. And now we are back on the line. So you can see that short term, if we're going to go lower, this is going to show resistance and a movement from the blue line lower. And if we're going to move higher here in the next couple of days through the weekend and the early part of the week, we would have to clear this blue line if BTC is to go higher. Remember, on the monthly for BTC, I still maintain that the line that I've been watching is this prior line. This line is a line we've been watching for many months, this line here. So net, we need to see BTC move back its monthly RSI above 69.1. We need to see BTC break out above the, I believe it was a 115,000K. I think 115,500-ish, if I'm correct. Depending on the exchange you're using, 115, about 700. So we'd have to move above that line if BTC is to move higher. So right now, we can say BTC sideways. Of course, what the bulls want to see is a future breakout above the recent weekly closing high and the monthly closing high, and also the RSI moving above 69.1 on the monthly. So right now BTC doesn't have the momentum that it was earlier in the month, looked like it was having, but since then that breakout has failed. So we can see that the breakout that was taking place this month for BTC has also reversed. So we can say not showing power to the upside, but that again, remember, some of these instruments, it takes them several attempts before later in the months down the road, they finally catch it right and they explode in price. So a breakout in BTC is imminent. We continue looking forward to that if that's what it chooses to do. Now, of course, if it ends up breaking below this range, let's say below this range here, the lows for this month, if it breaks the lows of this month, then there's a likelihood that we are going to see another push down as far as BTC is concerned. These are the closing numbers again. I am Eric with Mother.com. I leave you as I found you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. Go forth rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one creator. Adonai.